Go-ahead run at second base. Yankees looking for a 4-game sweep. Hader on the mound against Soto. The 3-2. That one's lofted into left field. It's a base hit.
How do you like that? Torres scores. The Yankees take a 4-3 lead. Oh, is he good? Oh, do we love Soto.
Soto does it again. An RBI single, and the Yankees lead 4-3.
John Sterling in midseason form. There's the back page of the New York Post today. A tremendous job by the Yankees in Houston. Now, John Heyman was there. Joel Sherman was in New York, but they both will be on top of this. We're going to handle Joel today. John will get on down the road. Mr. Sherman, it's a pleasure. Always good to talk to you. And I tell you, the Yankees, after last year, the fact that the Astros beat them all the time in postseason play, and the fact that Soto goes 9 of 17, Barry Bonds, 2002 World Series, goes 9 for 17 with 1,000,000 walks, big hits all over the place. You couldn't have asked for a better Yankee weekend to start it off. Let's start there. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, Chris, you mentioned this during the break, that you like when I make analogies that cross sports. And I thought one of the things that had happened to the Yankees in recent years, especially last year, was they had become like a basketball team. They were relying too heavily on two people, Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge, to win. They were 23-10 when Cole pitched. They were 11 games under 500 when they weren't. We saw what happened to their offense when Judge was out. Well, this weekend and for the first 2 months of the season, they don't have Garrett Cole. And I dare say this might be the worst you'll see Judge all year, who's obviously a great player. And they went into a house of horrors generally for them in Houston and swept without Cole and without the best version of Judge. Now, the idea of getting Soto was to have a co-star to Judge to balance the lineup, especially from the left side. And Soto was clearly the star of the weekend, but the 4 starters kept them in the game. The bullpen didn't give up a run during this series. Players like Volpe, Cabrera, Wells, Rizzo, others had big at-bats during this. I thought Torres' steal of second, first move to create, you're probably not going to get 3 hits in an inning against Hader to get into scoring position. They played baseball better than Houston this weekend, which is not common. They ran the bases better. They certainly fielded better. They were very clutch defending as well. They just were better in every phase than the Astros this weekend. And look, it's March, or it was March, the 4 games were played in. We'll see what it means for October if both teams get there, but what a good first step for the Yankees.
100%. It's going to, this is going to, I know we'll discuss this in November, but if he has an incredible year, which he's going to have, but barring no injury, how are the Yankees not going to get him re-signed? Have you thought about that?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a huge issue this year, and I suspect if he has a big year and loves it there, that the Yankees will figure out how to pay him $500 million plus and keep him long term. Chris, if I were thinking about 2 things with Soto beyond the obvious, what a tremendous hitter he is, and what a war he turns every pitch into, 2 things stood out. We just saw it there with the last one. We wonder, because he's going to play at Yankee Stadium, we've seen a lot of lefties fall in love with the short porch and change their swing. Brian McCann, Mark Teixeira, I think about, guys who really became so pull-centric, and it hurt their overall numbers, I thought, at some point. Soto this weekend just kept being Soto, which was deep at bats and go with where the ball is and use the whole field. That's number one, which I think will be good for him. 30, 35 homers is enough if he's going to have 1,000 OPS plus and be that kind of at bat. The other thing, and Chris, you know this well, you've done a radio show in New York forever. There's a certain kind of player that succeeds here, and it's usually the kind that isn't faking that they want the big moment. It's they really do want the big moment. And for 4 days, Soto on both sides of the ball showed he wanted the big moment. It actually bodes very well.
100%. All right, the Mets. I know you wrote a column about it today. Milwaukee, nice job by them. They've beaten the Mets a lot. Maybe they'll be a little better than we think. The young kid looks to be very good. All right, fair enough. And that's a bad division, so they got a chance. This is really more about the Mets. I think the problem the Mets are going to have, first off, I hate their starting pitching, Joe. I know it'll get a little better when Senga returns, but I don't like their starting pitching. It seems like the Mets are trying to split the baby. All right, yes, we're going to rebuild. We'll do it like the Dodger way. Hey, but listen, we have a chance to be in the postseason this year, and quote-unquote, I'll be disappointed if we're not in the mix there late September. Boy, that is, I know in New York you kind of have to say that, but that is very tricky. They don't quite know exactly what they want to do, and obviously this weekend was terrible. What's your take with that? Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, you said a lot there. I'll say this. In a different age, I think it would be difficult to do both things, but in a time of 6 playoff teams in each league, where 84 wins got not only 2 teams into the postseason in the National League last year, but one of them went all the way to the World Series in Arizona. I think that the Mets believe they could put together the kind of team that wins someplace in the low to mid 80s while trying to also do the big picture. But certainly not if this weekend was an indicator when they were outplayed in every facet by the way, like David Stearns was much more responsible for the team that beat them this weekend than the one that he's currently in charge of. You know, he was in charge when Churio was signed. He traded for Peralta. He traded for Yelich. Frelick was drafted when he was there. The other team was still much more his team. But, the Mets thing was disturbing because they just weren't good at anything for these 3 days. You try to keep in mind it's just 3 days. Every team is going to get swept in a series at some point this year. It just didn't look good. And McNeil, Lindor, and Nimmo didn't hit it all over the weekend, and their offense was bad because of it.
It was. All right, last thing, what do you think is going to be? You have an opinion on it, like I do. What do you think the end result's going to be with Ohtani?
Oh, Chris, I dare not go there because there's a federal case with the bookie. I think that our government generally moves very slowly on this kind of stuff. I do think because banking records are involved, it should be fairly simple, especially if these are American banks, to figure out who has control of it, who can do what with it. So I don't want to, this is obviously an important moment in really baseball history if this were to go off the rails here, and the worst were true about Ohtani. But I think that in this situation, we should treat it like we would a court case. He's innocent until proven guilty. He's given a public explanation of something that obviously goes against what was first publicly revealed about this by his translator. I will say 2 things, Chris, and I don't know if they'll mean much. Anybody who would think of Ipe as just this translator is falling far short. He's a little bit like Alfred to Batman. He was everything to him. He knew all his secrets. He took care of things. So if he had control of a bank account, it would not surprise me. Second of all, I know a lot of people say, how can he not know what's going on with his money? Chris, I've watched major league players who make millions of dollars get meal money, like handed to them before a road trip. And it's like, say, $800 or something, and they look at it like it's gold because they don't actually know what's going on in their bank accounts. It's being dealt with by other people. When my mother died, my father had no idea where anything was because he had given his money to my mother all the years and thought she was in charge of it. So I know it's easy to jump to conclusions about why doesn't he know what's going on with his money, but there are explanations here. They need to be made public. This needs to be a transparent process as far as the Dodgers, Major League Baseball, and Ohtani and his agency are concerned, and I hope they all rise to the level of transparency and we get a full understanding of what happened here.
Excellent. Yeah. I'm still waiting. He claimed massive theft, and as of right now, there's been no charge to any organization, FBI, local police, about massive theft.
I'm not, Chris,
you
know me pretty well. I'm not naive. I certainly am allowing the potential for the worst in my head here, and I have a lot of suspicions, but I do not want to rush to judgment because it's probably a lot more complicated case than we know.
Interesting developments, 4 sweeps from road teams in big spots. We'll get to all 4 of them now as we do a little potpourri. Joe Sherman, by the way, I forgot to mention him in the tease. How could I? He joins us here momentarily, a conversation with our pal. So we got that going on, too, as we take you home. Obviously, the weekend, the first one that comes to mind are the Yankees. Juan Soto, 9 of 17, bunch of walks. The out at the plate on the throw on Thursday. The Yankees beat their nemesis, the Astros, who got a lot of problems in their home building right now because they have lost 9 in a row in that build. They couldn't beat Texas. I'd be a little worried about the Astros. It really had a big carryover over last year where they couldn't beat the Rangers, and now they can't beat the Yankees. Soto was superb. The home run there on Saturday night, the base hit against Hader yesterday, the knock-in the game-winning run. Yankees played good defense late in the game. Birdie, of course, got that play at third base on the double play. Verdugo out in left field made a nice catch, too. Yankees beat the Astros. They used to catch to end the game. And the Yankees beat the Astros. Obviously, their bullpen was lights out. You couldn't get a run off that bullpen, and the Astros had first and second, nobody out yesterday in the bottom of the ninth. And, I understand the Astros were unlucky because the Alvarez ball down the left field line almost won it. It was a couple of inches foul. So I understand that. But the bottom line is the Yankees really put the rest the season a year ago where, they were 82 and 80 and just did not play very well all year long, had the injuries and what have you. And they bounced back here this weekend, and they do a superb job. Soto was, listen, he's a tremendous offensive player. His strike zone is unbelievable. I mean, he never gets a pitch wrong. He doesn't swing at pitches that are off the plate. He takes his walks. He hits left-hand pitching. He goes all over the place. He hit the home run to left field, the base hit to left field. Obviously, Torres, a little life at the top of the lineup. Volpe, before he got sick, did a nice job, too. Haven't had LeMahieu. He's got a broken foot now. We'll see, but still no problems there. I mean, the Yankees got it going. I mean, again, do I love their starting pitching? No. But they probably should be able to hang in there. Let's hope that Cole, for their sake, is okay there when he returns late in May. And their pitching is probably good enough to carry them. Their offense is excellent. How the Yankees are going to sign Soto at the end of the year, they're going to have to. I don't care what he wants, because if he has this kind of season, which I have every reason to think he will, where he hits, 300 with 40 homers and 130 RBIs, and the Yankees make the playoffs, we can let them walk. That's not the Yankee way. So we'll see how that works itself out down the road. But the bottom line is the Yankees had an incredible 4 games. I'd be a little worried about Houston. I never would have moved Presley into that 7th or 8th inning. To me, he did not deserve that. I understand they gave Hader all that money, but he did not deserve that. He closed for a championship team. He was out of sorts in his spot. Abreu was out of sorts. Obviously, Hader gives up a run. Major issues for Houston, we shall see. 0-4, 4-0. Yankees' first 4-0 start since 2003. That is number 1. Number 2 is their crosstown rival, the Mets, who had a brutal weekend against Milwaukee. Obviously, it was only 3 games, not 4, but the Mets were terrible. They did not hit. They don't have a lot of starting pitching. McNeil was completely out of line on that play, on the double play with Hoskins. I mean, you mean to tell me that slide was that big a deal that it caused that kind of outrage? And he was trying to make the throw to first base. The idea that he wasn't making the throw to first base is absurd. He was trying to make the throw to first base. That's why the transfer came into play. McNeil had to fight with Lindor a couple of years ago. He's a hothead. That was ridiculous. I don't have a major problem with the slide. A touch late, maybe. And I know Hoskins is obviously public enemy number 1, but I don't have a major problem with that slide. He was trying to throw the ball to first base. He can deny that all he wants. Listen, I mean, and then the Mets go out there the next day and they try to throw behind Hoskins when after he's destroyed him for basically the whole ball game. Ron Darling made that comment on SNY. He's 1,000% correct. I mean, the Mets that was a brutal weekend. They did absolutely nothing. They don't have big starting pitching. They didn't hit a lot. Lindor didn't do anything. I mean, it was a bad weekend. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, as Hoskins had a great response. He said, nobody in the I know he hits batters, this pitcher, but nobody in the major leagues is that wild unless he wants to be. And then he points to his hip instead of his head. I have no issues with Hoskins whatsoever. The Mets were completely lost all weekend. And again, based on what the Mets did in the offseason, based on their mixed messaging, the Mets have had a lot of mixed messaging. Well, we want to rebuild for the future. We want to do it like the Dodgers. Oh, by the way, though, we expect to be in the postseason mix, or at least in contention in September. Well, which one is it exactly? I mean, I don't know how you're going to split the needle and split the baby and do both. And that's what the Mets are going to try to do. Yeah, we think we're going to be a chance to make the playoffs. They told us they would be disappointed if they didn't get into the postseason. Oh, but by the way, we're looking to build the right foundation for the future. That's a mixed message to me. 0-3 at home to start the year against Milwaukee. A team now all of a sudden they can't beat. Issues as far as the Mets are concerned. And McNeil was totally out of line. I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. He was completely out of line. Made a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe a little late, maybe, but if it's a legal slide, nobody got punished, and the Mets themselves said it was a legal slide. Why does McNeil acting like that? All right, that's number 2. Number 3, the Pirates. It's amazing what momentum does. Pirates won that first game in Miami miraculously. They had to get out of the 10th and the 11th inning when they hadn't scored with man on second base and nobody out for Miami, and they did. They turn around, they win their next 3 games. Some comeback scenarios in all these games. Tellez hit a huge 3-run homer yesterday. And the Pirates, we'll talk to Derek Shelton, Alana will momentarily. 4-0 for Pittsburgh. I think this is an indication, too, that the Marlins might have a bad year. They got a lot of pitchers hurt. They have new leadership. They let Soler leave. They don't have a ton of offense. Arise hasn't done anything early on. I mean, the Marlins could have major problems in that. They could take a big step back in the NL East. Part of it's that, and part of it's Pittsburgh that showed you some spunk, that did a nice job with their, their pitching was okay. Their bullpen outside of the home run they gave up yesterday was excellent in the 9th inning. Good job for the Pirates, and they got a chance to follow that up. They go to Washington from here. They could do a nice job against the Nationals. And in Detroit, I watched some of these games against the White Sox in Chicago. They did a good job, too. Good performance by their bullpen, some nice comebacks, some timely hitting in the late innings, and they won 3 in a row against the Chi Sox. On the road. Now listen, the White Sox, I understand, in a rebuilding scenario, and they might have a real tough time out of the gate because the Braves go in there next. But Detroit, you got to beat up the bad teams, and the Tigers on the road won some close games. They won a game in extra innings. They got a run in the 9th inning yesterday to win a game against Chicago. Nice job by Detroit. Those are the 4 sweeps to start what's going on. Throw in a little outburst by McNeil, and you have it going here as far as baseball is concerned in opening weekend as we now turn to April. I mean, and, by the way, the Mets made a big deal. Well, you know what? You can lose 3 games in June, and nobody says anything. Remember, when you lose 3 to start the year and you're 0-3, that's a bad sign. It's not the same as a 3-game losing streak in June because nobody's paying attention in June for the most part. They are paying attention early on in the year. And, 3-game losing streaks become 5-game losing streaks, become 8-game losing streaks. Go ask the Cubs a few years ago, who got off to an awful start. Go ask, obviously, the Orioles in '88, in which Ripken Sr. was fired. They brought Frank Robinson in. Remember, you can't win a pennant in April, but you can lose one. That's where we begin on a morning program here on this busy first day of the new month. On April 1st, here's Alana, who's going to chime in. Miss Rizzo, it's all yours. Take it away.
Perhaps it wasn't Buck Showalter's fault in New York. Bad start for Carlos Mendoza as a manager of the New York Mets. Also a bad start, if you will, for Joe Espada of the Houston Astros. But a good weekend for new manager Pat Murphy for the Milwaukee Brewers as they, of course, swept the Mets. This is what I have to say, though, about Juan Soto, and then I'll get back to the New York Mets and the Jeff McNeil slide. Juan Soto is as advertised. Not only did he have the sweetest left-handed swing, perfect for the ballpark, of course. I realize they're not in New York yet, but perfect for Yankee Stadium. That great defensive play. Say what you want about Juan Soto defensively. Coming in on that single there, was able to throw out Mauricio Dubon at the plate. We rip this guy sometimes for his lack of defense in the outfield, and he actually won a game or helped them win a game because of his defense. Think about what he also did offensively, Chris. He becomes the first Yankees player in the expansion era since 1961 to post a go-ahead RBI in 3 of his first 4 games with a brand new club. So he comes over with all of this pomp and circumstance, but he's living up to the hype and living up to the billing of what it means for him to be a New York Yankee. I think there's just certain guys that live up to that moment and love the big stage. Juan Soto is one of those guys. Now, the Yankees have opened the season 4-0 for the first time, the 12th time in franchise history, but the first time that they've done so since 2003. New York has also won 7 consecutive games at Minute Maid Park dating back to last September. Alex Verdugo with the great diving, sliding catch there to end the game and to solidify the series sweep against the Houston Astros. They don't play well at Houston for whatever reason. The Astros haven't recently, but I have to say, I'm impressed with what Juan Soto has been able to do early on in his Yankee career. Of course, the losses were close games, too, which also leads me to believe that the Houston Astros better get better quickly with runners in scoring position, Chris. They were 8 for 41 with runners in scoring position. One of the losses was by 2 runs and 2 were by 1 run. So they were in every single game. They just couldn't pull out the big hit when they needed to. 8 for 41 with runners in scoring position. As far as the Mets are concerned, I believe that was a legal slide. It was a clean slide. He was trying to break up a double play. I have absolutely no problem with what Rhys Hoskins was trying to do there, breaking up the double play at second base. I also don't have a problem when Chase Utley slid into Ruben Tejada with the Mets and unfortunately broke his leg. Chase Utley's not a dirty player. Rhys Hoskins is not a dirty player. I have absolutely no problem with the way that he slid into second base, and I'm not certain exactly what Jeff McNeil was complaining about. I've seen slides that Jeff McNeil himself has made that looked less legal, more dirty than what happened with Rhys Hoskins and Jeff. That's a good base. That's a hard-nosed baseball play. And I understand that you're not, you don't want to get a guy hurt, but I think Jeff McNeil overreacted. And again, to throw
100%.
behind his head 2 hours later is beside the point. If you want to make a point, you do it the first time Rhys Hoskins is at the plate, or the first time, when you're trying to retaliate, you do it early, you try to send a message and you move on. But the New York Mets find themselves swept by the Milwaukee Brewers. So congratulations to Pat Murphy. Jeff McNeil needs to get over it.
I disagree with you about Utley, and he did get a 2-game suspension. I thought that was dirty myself, and he's a clean player
was
for the
not
most
dirty.
part. Well,
Was
then
not
why did he
dirty.
get a 2-game suspension? Why did he get a 2-game suspension then?
Because baseball has gotten soft.
Well, why didn't they suspend? Hold on now. No. He broke his leg. That was dirty. And he got a 2-game
He didn't
suspension.
break his leg intentionally. It's not like
Well,
Chase
we
went
know
in there
that, but, I
trying
mean,
to
he
break
still broke
Ruben
his leg.
Tejada's leg. It was
He got a
unfortunate that he broke his
Alana,
leg, but that wasn't the intent.
If it's legal, then why did he get a suspension?
I don't know. I don't think it was legal. In my
And
opinion,
it was Frank Robinson. And it was Frank Robinson who gave the suspension because at the time he was still alive and Frank was in charge of that. So it's Frank, and nobody played the game harder than Frank. So when you think about it, now I agree with you about 100% on Hoskins, but I do think that Utley was out of line. That's my take. That's a long time ago. Maybe we should. You know what we'll do? Chris. Find the Utley slide and compare the two slides, and then we can discuss which is
It
what.
was over. By the way, the suspension was overturned. He never served a 2-game suspension for that.
The
So
next
maybe
year
they decided it wasn't.
He didn't serve it the next year. The first 2 games
I
of
don't
the
think
season.
so.
Now I know he didn't suspend it.
It was
in the
overturned.
playoffs,
It was
because that
not a
was the
dirty
playoff
slide.
game.
It was not a dirty slide.
Okay.
No, I have it right here in my brain. I was there. At the game.
I thought he suspended it. I thought he got 2 games the following year. Maybe they did on appeal.
No.
I'd have to go back and look at that. But good job.
We have a
lot of
research
flying
department.
today
We can look.
on a Monday.
is a speed bump on the front. There is a speed bump on the front.